Robservations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, Imagination Connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of cinema and sci-fi, your archbishop of Banterbury, your chancellor of cheerfulness, your evangelist of the imagination, and, of course, your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, Robert Meyer Burnett, and welcome. Welcome to Robservations episode number 624. It's the show about something, after all, and I am Rob casting at you, you Imagination Connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community, and it is a momentous day, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle beings, kind souls, from across the 28 known galaxies, because you know what? We landed a new probe on Mars. That's right, Perseverance, after being launched 7 months ago in July, has landed on Mars today. Congratulations to the entire NASA Perseverance team and all of the engineers that made it possible. Once again, I was in a bar. I've told this story before, but I'll quickly recap. I was in a bar in Montreal at a film festival. I was at Fantasia when Curiosity landed. And the most cockamamie way of getting a probe, which is basically the size of a Mini Cooper, down to the surface of Mars. It's incredible. I mean, there was literally... to get our rover down, there was a floating, like a Sikorsky sky crane that lowered our lander, lowered Perseverance down, just like with Curiosity, on a winch, landed it to the Martian surface, and then blasted away and crashed while our rover turned on. Of course, we've got the first pictures back. Everything looks copacetic. And this time, not only is Perseverance going to be leaving samples to be picked up in containers by a future mission, it also has a drone on board. A drone that will be able to fly around the Martian surface. Now, here's what's fascinating. Our helicopters, the blades, I think they rotate something like 500 times a second or something like that. Some craziness like that. But because the Martian atmosphere is so thin, or is it 500 times a minute? Something like that. But I'm not sure. You're going to have to check me on this. But Perseverance's drone, 2,000 times, maybe it's 2,000 times a minute. So it's 4 times, it has to spin 4 times faster than in a terrestrial environment because the air on Mars is so thin, and that's the only way it can stay aloft. That's an interesting fact, but you'll have to check me on whether it's a second. It's probably a minute, but that's a lot of rotations in a minute. But anyway, congratulations. It's an incredible feat what they pulled off today, and it looked to me, I was watching the feed live from NASA. It looked like it went off without a hitch. So congratulations to everybody, and congratulations to humanity. We are still capable of great things. You know, even while Ted Cruz is flying down to Mexico to escape the cold in his home state, well, NASA landed a probe on Mars, so that place is even colder. Anyway, pretty exciting. So there's a couple of things off the top that I really want to talk about. But first, as many of you have known, my compatriot for Let's Get Physical Media, Dieter Bastian, had sent me a box. Normally, his boxes would just arrive on the front door and I would get them. Well, for whatever reason, he sent me a box all the way from Saarbrücken, Deutschland. And it unfortunately was kept by the post office and they wouldn't bring it back. I don't know. Anyway, guess what, people? I figured since it's a box from Germany and some of our moderators have things in here that they want, I would open this because we all love unboxings, don't we? Let's see what Dieter Bastian has sent me all the way from Saarbrücken, Deutschland. You know, most of the time he's sending me physical media that I can't normally acquire here in the United States. Boy, Dieter, this is one well-packed box. I'm going to have to not just use one hand. This is going to be a two-hander. And look, he's individually wrapped. My God, what a pack job you have done. This is unbelievable, Dieter. Leave it to a German to do something right. So here you go. Look at this. Well, this is for me. I'm very excited to have this. It's the third. Actually, it's going to be the fourth in total because you need it. This is the Arrow 4K box set of Crash. It's the Arrow version. So thanks for that, Dieter. I needed that. Yes, I did. And you know, I don't even remember. I don't even remember what it was he sent me. Now, here we go. A lot of people are going to be happy with this. I think if anybody could say, here we have, this is a steelbook of The Running Man, German steelbook of The Running Man. That's fantastic. I don't even own The Running Man. So, we got that. Oh, and here's a movie that everybody needs in their collection. The feel-good film of any year. Gaspar Noé's Irreversible. The one movie I've told people, this is the German disc of Irreversible, and you can actually watch this forward if you want. This is the one movie in my entire life. There's a scene in it I simply can't watch, and now I have it in 4K, which, you know, doesn't that make everybody a happy person? It does me. I don't know what this is. Look at this. Wow, wow. Well, these are gorgeous. These are media books for The Autopsy of Jane Doe. Wow, this is gorgeous. That I am a huge fan of this movie. I think it's one of the best horror films of the last 20 years. And here's a film called You Better Watch Out, the German media book from, I mean, I should be opening these on Let's Get Physical Media, but you know what? I'm doing it now because everybody's been in the chat complaining, Rob, why don't you go get this box? Now you can see that I was pretty inane to not get this box. This is something I was waiting for, of course. This is, wow, this is very exciting. As I open this up, I probably should have opened this up, but I wanted to do it. Here is the new Yellow album that is in, I think it's in Atmos, and which I love Yellow. I've loved Yellow pre-Oh Yeah. And there's also one for Bill Hunt from the Digital Bits. Here is Bill's. There you go, Bill. For Bill. Dieter labeled it in case I forgot, and I was going to keep both of them. Here is, Scott Adkins. Scott Adkins is a favorite actor of Dieter's. He sent me The Debt Collector. I've never seen a Scott Adkins film, so now I can be made a better person, which is terrific. Now here's, wow, Dieter. Dieter always puts dog treats in these boxes for Gilbert and Tallulah, which they always appreciate, and they always want more than I'm able or willing to give them. Now, for those of you who've been watching this channel for a long time, here is Justin Toner's copy, our own moderator, Justin Toner, of African Kung Fu Nazis. That's correct. In this movie, Hitler goes to Africa, and he gets taken out by African Kung Fu masters. This is, in fact, a real movie. It came out in Germany on, and this is a beautiful media book, by the way. So there are a number of Post-Geek Singularity members who have wanted this film, and I will get them to him. Iman Vang, here's your copy. So Iman, I know that you could not wait to get your African Kung Fu Nazis. Here it is. I'll put your name on it. There you go. Boy, I mean, and this is BL Ali. I know he has left the Post-Geek Singularity, but that doesn't mean he's not going to soon be the proud owner of African Kung Fu Nazis. There's two of these, and there's mine. So, there you go. Now, what else is in this box, Dieter? There is more dog treats. Different flavors. So, there you go. There's an unboxing from Dieter Bastian all the way from Saarbrücken, Deutschland. So, everybody is going to get what they are going to get, and I'm very happy to get that to them. Now, there's a few things I wanted to discuss. The first I want to discuss is the Snyder Cut. Yes, let's talk about the Snyder Cut. There was an interview with Zack Snyder's wife, Deborah Snyder, who has to be one of the cutest women to be working in Hollywood, who's also a very capable producer. Very smart lady. And she did an interview with the Lightcast podcast. And she confirmed that the running time of the Snyder Cut is 4 hours long, but it only consists of 4 minutes of new footage. And she talked about how labor-intensive the film was. And as I have been saying since the very beginning, one of my favorite things now is people are taking me to task. Some people are taking me to task saying, well, Rob, you really didn't support the Snyder Cut. You said it didn't exist. Look, a finished version of Zack Snyder's Justice League was never finished. It was never finished. There was cuts of it. I've explained ad infinitum over and over and over again. How many times, I don't know. But there was cuts of it, but it wasn't done. So Snyder also spoke about how labor-intensive the project was, in part because of the longer length of the film has resulted in thousands of visual effect shots required in the space of about 6 months. And that's partially to explain the $70 million cost on this. And here's what she had to say, which is fascinating for all the people eagerly awaiting the Snyder Cut, as I am. If you think about it, this is Deborah Snyder speaking, the producer of the film. If you think about it, it's about how much extra time that is, and then you think about how visual effects heavy these superhero films are, what we had to do in 6 months. 2,650 some odd visual effect shots. 2,650 some odd visual effect shots. There were 350 effect shots in Tenet. Normally, when you do these movies, what happens is you're shooting, you start turning over shots. Listen, we had a lot of assets built, but I think the way the theatrical release was done, they changed a lot of things. Through the process, as we were working on the movie, there were some of the things they wanted Zack to change, some of the designs of the characters. So we went back to the original intention of Zack's intention in terms of characters and had to rebuild those models, such as Steppenwolf. But then there were just so many shots to do. Visual effects people wanted a year to get it done, and Warner Brothers says, we'll do it, but we want it by the end of March. I think it was the beginning of March, actually, and we were like, okay, we're just going to have to figure it out. She also went into the additional filming saying, we literally shot one scene, like one additional scene. I shot 3 days here, that's it, that's what we captured. Said scene is reportedly the infamous nightmare scene teased in Batman v Superman and required the return of Ben Affleck, Ezra Miller, Amber Heard, and Jared Leto, who was in the movie for the first time. Miller shot his scenes by remote as he was in the UK working on Fantastic Beasts. Zack Snyder has revealed on his Vero account that he is working on a black and white version of the film he calls the Justice is Grey version. A first taste of Junkie XL score for the new film can be heard here, and meaning here, it's on Twitter if you want to look at it or look for it. It is on Tom Holkenborg's Twitter feed, but if you don't want to go looking on his Twitter feed, let me put it in the live chat for you right now. This is a link to the snippet of the score that he put on Twitter, and it's pretty cool, if I do say so myself, even though I had nothing to do with it. I just think it's cool. I was a big fan of his score for Fury Road. So that's kind of interesting. So I wanted to talk about that because everyone's always telling me, well, Rob, you weren't a big supporter of the Snyder Cut. It was never going to happen. And as I said, because of the fan engagement, even that, you needed someone who's going to have to pay for it. Now, we know that $70 million isn't cheap. I mean, of course, it was 20 years ago, but The Matrix cost $65 million. Hunt for Red October cost less. So $70 million to finish the Snyder Cut is a lot of money. And the problem is, who's going to pay for that? Well, when HBO Max came along, which is what I said on this show, I think I said it on like the 23rd or 24th of November in 2019. I said, now that HBO Max exists and is going to be looking for programming, maybe they'll pony up for the Snyder Cut. And that's exactly what happened, which is pretty cool. So, I'm very excited for this. I can't wait to see this fully realized, finished vision of the Snyder Cut. and we're going to get it in 28 days now or something, because February is a short month. Pretty exciting. Speaking of Vision, on Larry Young's Facebook page, a Facebook friend of mine, he used to hang out around these parts, he posted a rumor that he didn't come up with, or a theory about WandaVision that I wanted to share with you. I don't know if it's all true. I don't know how much of it I believe, but listen to this. And again, he's reporting this rumor. I don't know who originally came up with this rumor, so let me be clear. I don't know who came up with this. I just found it on Larry Young's page. He doesn't give anyone credit for it either, but he says it's not his idea. So somebody came up with this on some forum, wherever that may be. I don't know who that person is, but I wanted to share this because it's my favorite WandaVision theory so far. It is revealed that S.W.O.R.D. took apart Thanos' ship that was crashed in Endgame, including his quantum gate technology. When Wanda found Vision's body, she used her magic with the Thanos tech to pull a version of Vision from an alternate timeline right when he was made, but with no memories. However, he's anchored to his own timeline and, by extension, the Hex, which is why he can't leave. Doctor Strange shows up when Wanda is ready to kill Agnes. Agnes is Strange's ally and trained with the Ancient One hundreds of years ago. They confront Wanda in an astral plane. They bring in a projection of Magneto, old Magneto, to talk her down and explain to her about mutants and her responsibility to protect mutant kind. Charles Xavier is shown linking Magneto to the cameo, and he has a few words as well. It's a 5-minute cameo. The mystery engineer is Amadeus Cho. Sorry, no Reed Richards. He's able to use Thanos' tech to resurrect the real Vision. This brings Wanda back to reality. Hayward is revealed to be Nightmare. He was released as a byproduct of all the souls being reabsorbed after the blip. He wanted to antagonize Wanda to create the Hex so he could merge the world with another where the Infinity Stones still exist as he seeks them for his master. Battle between all the characters and Nightmare. He tempts Photon with bringing her mom back, but she refuses the offer. The fake Vision sacrifices himself. Ralph is actually Wong, who has been meditating this entire time in order to keep a psychic link with Doctor Strange. The last scene is Nick Fury arriving to take over S.W.O.R.D. He hints Nightmare was a smaller agent for someone else. Now, that sounds like fan fiction to me, but if there was any shred of any of that coming true, I'm like, that's pretty cool. I really enjoy that. So I'm here for it. So whoever came up with that theory, good on you, because that's some craziness. Now, there's an article that was in, again, our friend Richard Newby wrote this article today in the Hollywood Reporter in the Heat Vision section. How Wanda could introduce Marvel's mutants. Again, more theories. Now, I'll get into it. I want to read this article. Richard Newby again, February 18th. This was posted at 10 o'clock this morning. The Disney Plus series may provide an unexpected solution for how the MCU can incorporate an important part of the comic book universe. Things are changing quickly in Westview with the premiere of Episode 6, All New Halloween Spooktacular. WandaVision is 2/3 complete, and everything points to the last 3 episodes being a doozy. With every mystery that seemingly gets solved, another rises in its place. And as previously discussed, the number 6 carries a lot of significance when it comes to the mythos of the Scarlet Witch, her hex powers, and the devil who may be waiting just around the corner. While some audience members were beginning to suspect that Wanda was telling Vision the truth, that she wasn't controlling Westview, the latest episode proved that's not entirely the case. While there's a chance that someone is pulling her strings or manipulating her emotional vulnerability, Wanda's power is mighty, terrifying, and growing. The late 90s, early 2000s 6th episode of WandaVision, which riffs on Malcolm in the Middle, takes place on Halloween. In both Vision and Scarlet Witch comic series from the 80s, Halloween is a very important date for Wanda. It's not just a holiday, but a religious date on which she is most in tune with her powers, and where the veil between the world of the living and the dead is at its thinnest. Death hangs heavily over the most recent episode despite its comedic stylings. Wanda catches a glimpse of Pietro's dead body, just as she did of Vision's a few episodes earlier, and Agnes, momentarily removed from the spell over Westview, doesn't hesitate to remind Vision that he should be dead. This later revelation prompts Vision to attempt to see what's outside of Westview, an effort that seemingly kills him until Wanda expands the energy field, or hex, surrounding Westview, reviving his body and bringing more of New Jersey into her manufactured reality. In episode 5, Wanda told her twins Billy and Tommy that it was impossible to resurrect the dead, and yet, within the boundaries of her hex, that doesn't seem to be entirely the case, though the resurrected aren't exactly as Wanda remembers them. Pietro looks different, and his memories of his and Wanda's childhood don't entirely align, and Vision is not as easygoing as he appeared in the Avengers films. His typically calm demeanor has waned as the series gone on. "You've never spoken to me like this before," Wanda says during their big argument at the end of the 5th episode, the suggestion of a lack of recognition in her voice. Wanda appears to somehow be bringing people back, but they're all new, all different. Mutated. Mutation has, of course, been on everyone's mind since the start of WandaVision. The arrival of Pietro in the 5th episode, on a very special episode, spawned dozens of theories across the multiverse and whether or not Marvel's Fox Studios boss Kevin Feige was ushering Fox's X-Men into the MCU. Episode 6 doesn't provide much in the way of acknowledging those theories, but interestingly, this recast version of Pietro does seem to remember the events of Avengers Age of Ultron, including how Wanda's powers used to work, and getting shot in the street. But it feels as though Pietro's new appearance is something of a red herring for those looking for mutants by way of multiversal madness. It certainly has become easier to become distracted by what exists outside the narrative of WandaVision in terms of past films, other franchises, and future movies. But perhaps the answers lie inside of Westview rather than outside of it. I agree. Given series creator Jack Schaefer's recent comments about Feige wanting to approach Peter's inclusion in the MCU carefully and purposefully, it doesn't seem like the MCU is simply looking to loop in all of Fox's X-Men stars. So what purpose does Peter's inclusion serve other than meta-commentary on sitcom recasting and the fact that there were 2 Quicksilvers from opposing franchises at one point in time? As many online have speculated, Evan Peters would be a fitting name to fill Mephisto's red boots. Billy and Tommy's initial suspicion of their uncle Pietro's played for laughs, but like so much of what's happening in Westview, those laughs may hide a darker truth. It shouldn't go unnoticed that Wanda's twins are jokingly referred to as demon spawn, which in the comics is exactly what Billy and Tommy are, fragments of Mephisto's shattered soul. If Wanda has the power to recreate the world as she wishes, it would make sense that Mephisto would look for a way to siphon those powers or feed on yo magic, as the distressing in-universe yogurt commercial suggested. The fact that both twins discover their powers in a recent episode adds another wrinkle to the Mephisto and mutants theory. Pietro has a tattoo that says Mom, visible for a quick instance early in the 6th episode. This is actually Peter's real tattoo, but the fact that it wasn't removed in post, as so many actors' tattoos are, is curious. Maybe in terms of Pietro's character, it really is just a tribute to his late mother, or maybe it's an acronym for Multiverse of Madness, the Doctor Strange sequel Wanda is set to play a prominent role in. Or perhaps, most interestingly, it is an acronym for Mother of Mutants. But it's not just Billy and Tommy who would be the mutants in the theory. Perhaps in an inverse of the House of M storyline, Wanda creates mutants. This has been a long-running theory online, but only now, in the 6th episode, does there appear to be actual evidence supporting it. Darcy clues Monica Rambeau in on her changing molecular structure. Fans already know Monica's long comic history as a superpowered heroine with energy absorption and manipulation abilities. Undoubtedly, WandaVision is serving as her origin story ahead of her role in Captain Marvel 2. In the comics, Monica gained her powers after being exposed to a weapon containing extra-dimensional energy. The MCU is straying from that origin in some ways, but in the broad strokes, with Wanda being seen by S.W.O.R.D. as a weapon-wielding extra-dimensional energy, Monica is acquiring powers in much the same way she did in Amazing Spider-Man Annual 16 from 1982. But if Monica has seen her body chemistry change after the 2 trips into the Hex, what does that mean for the residents of the still expanding Westview? Perhaps, by the end of the series, the whole world will be an extension of Westview, if only for a moment, and through this ordeal, a certain percentage of the world's population may emerge as the MCU's first mutants, possessing the Hex gene, which will undoubtedly be shortened to something more familiar. The X gene. Whatever the endgame is with Wanda's Hex powers, it looks increasingly likely that the arrival of mutants will be a significant part of her future. I don't know, Richard. So I'm gonna. Here's the thing. Here's what I think. I don't like that. I don't like. I have loved, of course, everything in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is an adaptation of the Marvel comic universe, and clearly there are certain origins and certain things that are even too outlandish to work in the Marvel Cinematic Universe because they still need to make you believe. There are certain things that if you brought them over from the comic books, they would definitely strain credulity if you tried to put them in the MCU. And I think one of the great things about the Marvel Cinematic Universe is the way they've made us believe it. They've created and yes, there are some inconsistencies here and there. There certainly are. But for the most part, they've done things like they went back to Ed Brubaker's amazing run in the Captain America comics to give us the Winter Soldier storyline. They're going to dip into the Secret Invasion, as they've told us, which was a very significant story. Actually, part of the Winter Soldier storyline overlapped with the Secret Wars or the Secret Invasion storyline. Let's face it, they're going to do Secret Wars 2 at some point, I'm sure. I don't know if they're going to bring the Beyonder into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, although that might be hilarious. I don't see how they can. Again, I think that might push things just a little too far, but you never know. But I do think that they've done a really good job of making us believe in that universe, and they've taken these things and, like Wanda and Pietro's powers when we first meet Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch in Age of Ultron, it's insinuated, of course, that the Tesseract is what has been one of the Infinity Stones. Obviously, is one of the things that has been causing their powers. And I always thought, because they were calling these people miracles instead of mutants because of the rights issues with Fox at the time, and I always thought when they introduced these characters that it wasn't the Tesseract giving them powers. It was just amplifying their Homo superior nature. I mean, the X gene in the comic universe, mutants are Homo superior, as opposed to us, we are Homo sapiens. Unless any of you out there watching this right now are in fact yourselves mutants, in which case I would not want to misspecies you. I know how iffy that could get. So if you're in fact Homo superior, please. I don't mean to call you Homo sapien. Don't take offense to it. I'm just ignorant. But I think that the interesting part of all of that is one of the things in the Marvel Universe that I've always liked, the comic universe now, is the fact that when mutants were revealed, and mutants were on Earth for a long period of time. Wolverine was very old. Apocalypse goes all the way back to ancient Egypt. There's even mutants that were older than Apocalypse. So I've always liked the idea that mutants have always been here. And somebody suggested, one of our viewers, one of our astute Imagination Connoisseurs, contacted me and said, well, Rob, what if, in every issue of Avengers, when something happens, the X-Men don't show up? What if the X-Men are here and we just haven't heard their story yet because we've only been seeing things from the perspective of the Avengers and all the characters that make up the Avengers? And I thought, that's actually pretty interesting because, I mean, if you think about it, the battle against Thanos was pretty much an Avengers battle. It's not like everybody on Earth was aware of all of these things. So who's to say that that mutants haven't been in the Marvel Cinematic Universe the whole time? They just haven't made their presence known. There could be an Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters now down Graymalkin Lane. I mean, who knows? There could very well be, and who's to say we just haven't heard about mutants? Just like we didn't know that there were Skrulls on Earth in the 90s. We didn't know much about Captain Marvel. There's a lot we don't know, and I think that you could tell a parallel storyline. The Eternals have been on Earth. We don't know what their deal is yet either. So I think that this situation, I don't think is going to create mutants in the Marvel universe. I think this situation is going to wind up being the revelation of mutants in the Marvel universe. At least that's what I'm thinking, because Wanda Maximoff is a mutant. Now, where does that leave this whole idea about Peter or Pietro and Evan Peters' Quicksilver as opposed to Aaron Taylor Johnson's Quicksilver? Now, what I've said on this show, and I said on John Campia's show, that I first of all, if they decide to say to us, I like the idea that somebody somewhere within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, whether it was Mephisto, whether it was Nightmare, even Sword, maybe we're going to find out that it was Sword who has now the technology to look through the multiverse. And if there was some way that they were looking for another Quicksilver and they came across that particular Quicksilver and brought him here, but it doesn't explain his memories of dying in Age of Ultron. There's a lot of weirdness going on, but somehow if they've made some kind of, and remember, this is not the first multiversal rip in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That happened at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home when J.K. Simmons is revealed to be J. Jonah Jameson in our universe. So they already went to a different cinematic universe, Sony's Spider-Man universe, and brought a character over. And I was saying, I suspected that was the first indication that we saw of a dimensional rip, that we just weren't aware of it. It set up a question. But now Evan Peters, his Quicksilver from the Fox universe, which is, so what I find really interesting is the idea of the multiverse was beautifully used in the Spider-Man movie with Miles Morales, of course. People love that film. It won the Oscar. That was a multiverse film. They've brought it over. It makes sense that J. Jonah Jameson also establishing the multiverse for the MCU. Then, of course, we have Evan Peters from the Fox X-Men movies. So far, what I think is genius, if they're going this direction, is they've taken these other two studios and made those, and of course within Sony's Spider-Man universe in the animated film, they've established other multiverses. So Peter Porker, the Spectacular Spider-Ham, exists. Now, if they're going to do that, if they're going to say, okay, our multiverse is comprised of Fox, that's why Deadpool could come from there, and you bring, it works canonically. While we know all this stuff from the comics, I do think it's strange credulity to do this for the MCU. I mean, I hope that this multiverse stuff happens and then they close it off. I mean, they can leave it there if they need to go there, but at the end of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, they need to end all of this, because I think that one of the great things about the MCU is it stands alone and we can believe in it. We've also got the quantum realm. We saw different time periods. We know that the ancient one that we saw in Endgame is different from our ancient one. Our universe doesn't have infinity stones anymore. What does that mean? There's so much stuff that's happening. Look, man, I'll tell you, I'm there for it. I love all this shit. But I don't know how far people are going to buy into that. And by the way, are you liking my Evan Peters Quicksilver hair? I'm trying. No, I just haven't cut it in a long time. But I kind of maybe I'll do an Evan Peters cosplay for Halloween if Halloween isn't canceled this year, and I'll just keep growing my hair. One never knows. But at any rate, I think there's never been a better time to be a comic book fan who also is getting movies. You got the Snyder Cut coming from DC. We've got WandaVision, Falcon and Winter Soldier, Black Widow, The Eternals, Shang-Chi, and what else is coming out? Oh, and Doctor Strange, Spider-Man 3. I mean, come on. What a time to be alive, everybody. I think it's a phenomenal time to be an imagination connoisseur, because come on, man. Are we getting the best stuff or what? You know what's the best stuff? Your letters. Your letters are the best stuff, and let's dip into them, shall we? Yes, I think we shall. I got to see who is up first. There's a lot. I'm going to start with this one. Levi Old Elk, a.k.a. 501. Dear Rob, I've written a couple of times before, I remember, about my experience at the Sundance Film Festival with the film Naming Number 2 and my Terminator 2 in 3D theatrical experience. My reason for writing this time is your response about Marvel needing to completely reboot the X-Men universe in order for them to be properly introduced to the Avengers MC universe. I think you're wrong. Why reboot and recast everyone when the actors from the First Class era are available? People need continuity, and continuity has a positive effect. Just look at Quicksilver's return. Think about this historical possibility just for a second. The X-Men were here first, both cinematically and in the film's timeline. The beginning of the Avengers world and events only began when Iron Man was born in the late 2000s, with Captain America's side mission the only exception. Well, now we know Captain Marvel was on Earth in the 1990s, too. The X-Men have been around since Wolverine and Sabretooth's appearance in World War I, even before that. And nothing should ever be taken away from Magneto's experience in World War II. And who are we to say where the Avengers were during the X-Men's plights? With both franchises' stories holding very secluded and or isolated events, they each had their own personal battles that nobody would have ever known about, especially without today's social media barrage that the Avengers made clear was a factor in their apparent appearance on the world stage during the Battle of New York. Everything the X-Men have gone through, even at the time change circumstances of Days of Future Past presented, even Logan for that matter, all of these events occurred alongside or prior to the events of the Avengers, each group dealing with their own situation separately. Yeah, but what about Apocalypse? How do you explain that? You know, and the Sentinels and Magneto dropping a football stadium or a stadium on the White House? I mean, the revelation, those mutants have been here, man. And people would know. Even when the events made world news, San Francisco, a la X-Men, Sokovia, Battle of New York, Endgame, why would the X-Men involve themselves or have time to involve themselves in such world events when things were happening in real time along with their silent rule of seclusion? I know, right now you're saying, what about the Mutant Registration Act? So that's happening and the news is covering it, but the only thing we've seen so far in the Avengers news is news concerning them. Why would we be shown news concerning mutants in their world? We wouldn't. It doesn't mean that it isn't happening. So they can only watch with the rest of us while Thanos snaps his fingers and they, along with the rest of us, endure the 5 years after the effects of the snap. I can suspend my disbelief and take it all in stride. To me, everything is happening in both worlds all at once. Why is that so hard to grasp? What irks me is everyone needs the X-Men to be involved with every event the Avengers have endured and want to see or hear an explanation on screen in order for it to be accounted for thus far. Only, no, they don't. People want WandaVision to neatly tie the bonds together for them without any gray areas, when life is full of gray areas. Quicksilver's appearance is an excellent example, and even if he isn't the true Quicksilver, the door has been opened, and I trust in them to blend in the current X-Men with the Avengers by utilizing established actors or characters, because you know what? They'll just hit home to us a lot harder and more powerful than some random person we've never heard of before arriving on screen trying to convince us that they are the new X-Men. What are your thoughts on this? And as always, live long and prosper. 501. Listen, Levi Old Elk, you're a great member of the Post-Geek Singularity community, but I respectfully, sir, I think you're wrong on this one. I have to be diametrically opposed to your point of view, but not in a mean way. I just think, look, we got a new Spider-Man. They showed us a new Spider-Man that he was shown as he was already active. Tony Stark tracked him down, and we got Tom Holland as Spider-Man. And it was great because I honestly believe that the Marvel Cinematic Universe, needs to establish all of this unto itself because it begins and ends with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So, oh, by the way, I was going to tell everyone, we're going to do a members after party after this show, but I'm not going to do that anymore. We've moved it to tomorrow. So if you are a member and wanted to do the after party, I've moved it to tomorrow, mostly because John Campea is doing at 5 o'clock tonight a WandaVision pregame show. He's never done this before. He's doing a pregame show on his channel starting at 5 o'clock. He said grab an adult beverage. It's funny because John doesn't drink at all, so what does he know about pre-gaming? But anyway, he wants you to grab an adult beverage and to join him speculating about what's going to happen as we move into Act 3 of WandaVision's story. The first 3 episodes were Act 1, episodes 4, 5, and 6 were Act 2, and of course, episode 6 it ended on a giant note with the Hex expanding and sucking up the world and wondering who is Monica, who is the aerospace engineer Monica is going to meet to see if they can render aid with this situation. I don't know if we're going to find out tonight, but apparently the last 3 episodes of WandaVision, which would be Act 3 of the story, like in a screenplay, you've got Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. That's how this story was structured. And apparently each episode's an hour long, so I'm there for that. It's going to be epic. I can't wait. I will be holding an adult beverage in my hand at midnight tonight as I delve into this week's episode of WandaVision. But I look, for me, Levi, I think that the MCU should stay. I am a universe purist. I know we can get into some sketchy conversations over this, but I think that the universe should be pure, and they're clearly delving into the multiverse, which I think is fun. And like I said, I love the idea that you're going into a multiverse and you can say that obviously Sony's Spider-Verse exists. We were supposed to already have Morbius and we were going to get Venom 2, but they've been pushed. So in addition, and that universe is going to include Tom Holland. So there's a crossover there. I think eventually we're going to see that the Sony Spider-Verse is a part of the MCU, not a multiverse part of the MCU, but an actual part of the MCU. But I think their other previous, The Amazing Spider-Man and Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, those were part of a multiverse, which I think is great. So you've got 2 different multiverse Spider-Man. Tom Holland's a 3rd Spider-Man. So I think our universe needs to have universal purity, because if you start bringing over the Evan Peters Quicksilver thing, look, I will allow that. I don't know how they're going to explain all this because they got some explaining to do. I don't know how it's all going to work, but I want to see the MCU's interpretation of these new characters. I think it's a way of rebooting these characters. I'd like to see an original X-Men team, the way they formed originally. I just think we can. There's a lot of things they can do that are already set up. I would like to see the X-Men reinvented as their MCU versions. I just think that would be better. So, I just thought it would be fun. David Kukol writes in, takes me to task here. Hello, Rob. What's happening? In your last show, you questioned the relevance of the James Bond character in the modern cinematic milieu and expressed your thoughts with insight and articulation as usual. It got me thinking about characters and franchises with long lifespans and the ways in which they endure the passage of time. Bond began as a literary character that has been adapted into other mediums, reinvented and reinterpreted by many hands, and has been in and out of fashion on many occasions. Bond shares all of the above qualities with another of my favorite fictional creations, Sherlock Holmes. I have loved Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's legendary detective most of my life. I began with the Holmes literary canon, there's that hot-button word for fans of any franchise, and have viewed many of the multiple television and film adaptations. If Ian Fleming's Bond was born in the Cold War, then Doyle's Holmes was forged in the Victorian and early Edwardian era. One of Doyle's late additions to the series see Holmes and Watson operating on the eve of the First World War, but canonical Holmes does not extend much further into the 20th century than that. And yet, we have seen the TV and filmic Holmes battle Nazis, be cryogenically frozen and revived in the 1980s, and be reimagined as a character contemporary to the 21st century, to name a few examples of the character being taken out of time. I am a bit of a purist and prefer to see Holmes in the Victorian era, and the late Jeremy Brett is my favorite on-screen Sherlock. But the important thing to note is that the character has endured not only because of its inbuilt traits, but also due to the fact that it has been reinterpreted for new generations. I think James Bond can continue to be vital for the same reason. Will every version of 007 speak to all fans? No. This is also true of any long-running franchise from Star Trek to Star Wars. I may not like every interpretation of Holmes or Bond or Trek, but part of me is glad that new versions of these characters are being brought before fresh audiences. Okay, crass commercial interests might drive these continuations, but that's another story. Keep giving us that food for thought, Rob. Respectfully, David. David, what a great letter. Here's the thing. Sherlock Holmes is a detective. And I think whether you're in the Victorian era or the modern age, there's always a place in society for a detective. And I think we've seen it countless times. And so when you do a Sherlock series with Johnny Lee Miller and was it Lucy Liu, or was it who was that? Who was that show? I forget. I think it was Lucy Liu, right? So that show was a pretty cool updating of the Sherlock Holmes mythos, but I think the idea of a detective series is something that never goes out of fashion, the idea of being a detective. Because we have detectives now, we had detectives 200 years ago. But the character of James Bond is very specifically tied to a certain part of our history. Whereas a detective isn't necessarily, I mean, yes, the original Conan Doyle stories were set in the Victorian or Edwardian era, but the idea of bringing a Sherlock Holmes character forward is not, I think the time in which Sherlock Holmes lived wasn't necessarily as limiting as the time that James Bond was created. The character coming out of British intelligence after World War II, being a naval commander and all of that. Yes, they brought him into the 60s, but I think the James Bond character and series itself shows you, I think, the problem with the character and the franchise in that the world that he inhabited, the world that he was created to exist in, has changed so much. Even the way governments and countries conduct business and do things, sure, we still have secret agents and those kinds of things, but we don't even know who necessarily the bad guys are. You know, that when Bond was functioning at his peak, and certainly when he was either dealing with Smersh and the Russians, or he was dealing with Spectre. One was a state agency, one was an international criminal organization, the Special Executive for Counterintelligence, Terrorism, Revenge, and Extortion. So nowadays, I mean, I guess you could bring back an evil state, but the problem is, if from a Bond standpoint, unless you're ultimately the great thing about Bond during the Cold War is that the world could end. So the state-sponsored animosity, call it what you will, not animosity, the adversarial relationship that, say, Russia and the United States had and Britain had with Russia was such that the world hung in the balance. Mutually assured destruction. Nowadays, you know, there's all kinds of, there's strange bioweapons that can be released. There's climate change. You don't have the fearsome, I mean, our economies, nobody wants to have a nuclear conflict. No one's going to make any money. It'll just end the planet. And I don't think anybody wants to do that anymore. So I just think the world that we live in now is a different one. Sure, Bond can always go after people, but even if you look in the movies, even the Daniel Craig films, as much as I like Casino Royale, at least Casino Royale, he still went and swam on the beach and picked up hot women on horseback, and there was still the fantasy element, the man's man, but then so many of the more modern Bond films are so like dour. In World Is Not Enough, a movie that I don't entirely dislike, I kind of like it. They go to the oil fields of Kazakhstan. It's not exactly the Casino Royale in Montenegro. You know, Bond existed in a high-class, high-fashion world of wealth and privilege in addition to saving the world. And now watching Bond being brought down again to sort of, there's no glam. It's the Bond franchise was a fantasy franchise about glamour and now it's been completely de-glamorized, and some of the appeal of Bond. I mean, sure, as a character, I guess you can always have him come and bring him back in film after film. But how is Bond any different anymore than Jason Bourne or The Rock when he's in Central Intelligence or something? I think that's the problem with the character, is that all of these staples. I mean, we've even seen the Bond character. He's sort of, ever since Living Daylights, he was sort of neutered when he can only sleep with one woman, and now Bond is he's a poster boy for toxic masculinity. And I think the entire franchise, the entire conception of the franchise is it's been slowly chipped away at, and I just don't know if you can make a great, I guess we'll know in No Time to Die. I mean, Bond's one of my favorite franchises. I love the Bond franchise. We shall see. We shall see. But I don't know. I don't know how it's going to go. Will No Time to Die, with James Bond growing up and having a child apparently and having a wife and all that, how will that work? We shall see, maybe, because I can't wait. Cannot wait. So, there you go. This one comes from Tim at Templar University. Now, I say that where I'm thinking the Knights Templar, but he wrote me a very nice super chat and said that he appreciated me looking at conservative fans in a constructive way, and I appreciate that. So Tim writes in and says, "Hey Rob, moderator, Post-Geek Singularity Squad. Good to speak with you again. I wanted to reach out and share a story about something that happened to me that was wild, regarding the canceled Batman film that Ben Affleck was supposed to write, direct, and star in. Yourself and your audience will probably get a kick out of this one. You tell me yourself if you think this is crazy." The event dates back to January 5th, 2017. As an avid Batman fan, I usually keep myself updated with all the news related to any upcoming films regarding the franchise. Back then, there were a few articles released detailing how Ben Affleck was having a difficult time on writing the script for the Batman film. So I did what any regular person does. I messaged him on Instagram, giving him an honest opinion of what I thought was a good concept. Before you make fun of me for my naive, ambitious behavior, just know that I give you the full right to do so as you please. Anyway, we wouldn't be reading this if I hadn't fanboyed out at the time, right? Ha ha. Now, I'll shorten it down for your audience, but on January 5th, 2017, I sent a story that would take place within the walls of the infamous Arkham Asylum. The plot revolved around the strange disappearance and murders of some of the guards and inmates. Batman would be called in to investigate the situation, and the film itself would have solely taken place within the walls of Arkham, as the world's greatest detective would showcase his talents and skill sets for most of the film. The filming perspective would alter that of the Dark Knight and one of the crazed inmates in the asylum, so that we could get a visual on how terrifying Batman appears to his prey. Once we go halfway through the script, the audience, along with Batman, actually start questioning the investigation. We start witnessing Batman questioning himself, and ever so slightly losing his mind. Whether it's the strange aura surrounding the historical mental asylum, or whether it's due to a severe lack of sleep, we see it severely take its toll on Bruce in this narrative. Batman slowly starts believing, perhaps, that he was the one who murdered the guards and the inmates. For once, his callous psyche sports a crack, and it's in its foundation, and he is left with nowhere to go but to linger amongst his madness, trapped within the asylum. As he is ushered into his breaking point, all of a sudden he is confronted by an old foe, Slade Wilson. Slade essentially took advantage of his opponent by wearing him out before their altercation. Studying Batman throughout the years, he decided to use ancient war tactics to demolish the Batman's exhausted mind due to his overly strenuous schedule as the Caped Crusader. Throughout the asylum, Slade would have stalked and manipulated Batman's investigation to influence his mind to believe he had completely lost control. But after their fight, we see the Batman still overcome and regain control over his mind after all, taking away a new strength in true Batman fashion. Toward the conclusion of this film, we find out that Lex Luthor hired Slade for this hit job, a revenge plot against Bruce after he locked Lex up in that asylum after BVS. Lex was able to analyze and study the psychotic ambience of the asylum enough to give Slade the ammunition he needed to finally pierce the armor of the Bat. This was the breakdown of what I sent to Ben Affleck. Rob, if you heard the synopsis that Joe Manganiello recently gave regarding the scrapped Batman project, it was almost an identical story plot. This was even sent before the Justice League film was released, and at the end of that film, in the post-credit scene, we witness Lex hire Slade. I don't know about you, but this is freaky stuff, and I can even email you the messages dating back to that date if you'd be interested in this story. Anyway, I thought this might be an interesting read for you guys, Rob. I want my money. How do I get it? Ha 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 ha. Which Batman adaptations were your favorite throughout the years? Take care. Well, Tim, let me just tell you, this story once again proves the old adage, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate, and it ain't show friends, it's show business. Don't ever do that again, first of all. The reason that, like, people always ask me, Rob, can you read my script? Rob, can you read my book? I shy away from doing that. If somebody wants to send me a book, I can read a book. Like, Stub McShave sent me a beautiful fantasy novel. I can read that. But you send me something that's yours, like if it's a script or it's something. I mean, if it's out in the wild, it's not such a problem. But if somebody wants to send me a screenplay, I can't read it for that very reason, because there's a lot of ideas, similar ideas. I mean, obviously, there's an Arkham Asylum game series about Batman. And it's not a stretch to think about, oh, the Arkham Asylum game has provided me with a very interesting idea. I'm sure you might have taken some of your idea from that game, or the idea that that game exists. There's also the Grant Morrison's Arkham Asylum graphic novel. So there's ideas out there that make people come up with similar ideas from one another, because something is in the zeitgeist. And that's the reason you get Armageddon and Deep Impact, or what's 17 again, and the other, when there was age swapping movies or something like that, or Big even. So these things happen, which is why it's so crucial to never throw your ideas at anyone professionally, and then if they end up doing them, and then you turn around and go, well, that was my idea, and you want to sue. It's like, okay, well, that might be true, but you got to prove to me, and you might have proof. There might be a little bit of a paper trail there. I don't know. It did sound like there are certain elements that you described to me that did sound very similar to what they were saying in that Arkham Asylum movie. But again, without having read their script, I don't know. I've heard the script is quite good, however. And I've wanted to get it and read it. So, if anyone out there has it, help a brother out and throw it my way, would you? But what a great letter. Very, very interesting. This one comes from James Wallace. James Wallace writes in and says, "Hi, Rob. When Christopher Plummer passed away, there were references to his remarks concerning William Shatner. Due to Plummer getting lucky one evening, he dislodged a kidney stone. As a result, he couldn't go on in a performance of Henry V and William Shatner." I watched this. You can actually watch this story on YouTube. His understudy had to take over. Plummer said that the choices that Shatner made, he knew Shatner would be a star. Stella Adler once told Robert De Niro, "The talent is in the choices." I would argue that William Shatner is one of the greatest stars due to his choices. What is a star exactly? A star is someone that has a unique quality that engages the audience no matter what. No matter the character they make, you relate to them. Also, a star never gets boring and is always reinventing themselves successfully. To me, Tom Cruise is probably one of our greatest stars. You'll see him in almost anything. He'll dominate the role and make it interesting. Right now, Cruise is still grabbing audiences' attention with his action scenes. However, by the time Mission Impossible 8 is released sometime in 2022, Cruise will be 60. The same age Shatner was for Star Trek VI back in 1991. That blows me away. Both, by the way, Paramount movies. Apparently, Mission Impossible 8 will be the last one for Cruise, maybe even his last action film, which will be okay. People forget that Cruise primarily made dramas in his 20s and 30s. It was almost laughable in some respect when news of him wanting to be an action star in Mission Impossible back in 1996 But now look at him. So when Cruise goes back to making dramas, and that movie will be shot in space, he'll make some interesting choices. Now back to Shatner. He, for me, is probably someone I will watch in almost any film, good or bad. Hell, I watched him in American Psycho 2, All-American Girl. Yeah. And to hear him say, "Shut the fuck up," was probably the highlight of that terrible film. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. I watched some of the forgetful TV films he was in during the 80s and 90s. Thing is, like Tom Cruise, Shatner seems to always give it his all. He's committed. The other reason he's a star is due to his influence on many men and women out there with his performance of James T. Kirk. Out of the first frame of Where No Man Has Gone Before, Shatner cemented Kirk. Unlike watching other actors in pilots and then seeing the character develop through the show, the foundation of Kirk was there. You were intrigued by him from the get-go, or at least I was. Me too, I was too. Same with Spock. However, Nimoy tinkered with his character quite a bit through the first season and the original pilot, hence that award-winning writer having to write a short trek to explain Spock's smile. Ugh. Back to the topic. As a boy, I was influenced by watching Kirk. I learned or saw examples of how to maybe flirt with a girl, or fight, or try and lead. Catholic school was rough sometimes. I also imitated Spock as a young boy too, but if Kirk or Shatner as Kirk had that kind of influence on so many people and his obsession to so many filmmakers today, like Quentin Tarantino, David Fincher, and a few others, plus countless imitations, even though said imitations are grossly exaggerated, sure, Shatner had trouble remembering his lines on the original series due to time constraints and sometimes the script literally being handwritten, but still he gave us something we've never seen before, and it's usually referenced and remembered, and that's another quality of a star. Another reason I bring up Shatner is due to that he was in the rumor mill again to reprise his role as Kirk for the next Star Trek film. He shot down the rumor and claimed it was clickbait. Still, he's a man who'll be 90 on March 22nd, and people are still not over him as Kirk, even though the character died 27 years ago in Star Trek Generations. Fans still want him to come back in the role. Shatner doesn't need Kirk anymore. He was great as Denny Crane in Boston Legal, winning awards and respect from the industry that eluded him over the years. Some stars are good without material, however, and when they have it, they're golden. Playing Denny Crane was golden. Look at De Niro and Pacino, two men that are considered great actors, yet if they don't have the right material, you forget how they are considered that. Shatner hasn't really been considered a great actor. I would argue against that. He's made characters that even if the material wasn't great, the characters worked. Plus, he added his spin to it that really elevated what you would watch. Take T.J. Hooker. Not a good show. But when Shatner's on the screen, you can't help but watch. Same with Star Trek Generations. Even though Patrick Stewart is considered a top-rate actor, his scenes with Shatner, you watch Shatner. The man has presence, and unlike most stars that got older, he's still relevant. You still watch him now like you did when he was younger. A quick story about my time around William Shatner. 17 years ago, when I first moved out to L.A., I was desperate for work, so I worked as a production assistant on a National Endowment of the Arts video about Shakespeare. At the time, Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson would gather actors at the David Geffen Playhouse in Westwood. That day, we interviewed the likes of Martin Sheen, Bill Pullman, Tom Hanks, Martin Short, Michael Richards, Christina Applegate, and William Shatner. All in that day. When in a room with Shatner and he speaks, the room gets quiet and people listen. My regret is that I didn't talk to him or introduce myself. He was shorter than I expected. So was Sheen. I think both men came up to my shoulder, and I'm 5'10". Anyway, what struck me was, even though this was maybe a 5-minute interview and then a reading of a monologue, Shatner was present and took it seriously, making sure the audience of teenagers weren't talked down to in regard to learning about Shakespeare. The interview space was small, and anyone that moved too much might have knocked down equipment that could have hit him. At one point, a crew member told my friend Sergey not to move. Shatner heard this and said, "Sergey, don't move." I was so pissed. Shatner said my friend's name, but not mine. Later that night, all the actors I mentioned above did a performance on stage, and Shatner, with his presence, commanded that stage. At one point, his character was saying, "Answer thy call." Then, unexpectedly, someone in the audience's cell phone rang, and without missing a beat, Shatner said toward the audience, "Answer thy call." Wishing you could see Tom Hanks Wishing you could see how Tom Hanks was enamored of Shatner. It was cool. I think anyone that has survived all Shatner has survived over the years and the performances he's given deserves a great deal of respect. There's a reason Star Trek grabbed young kids and adults' attention years ago, and a great deal of that was due to the performance of Mr. Shatner. He's lived long, he's prospered, and we've prospered by his star presence and performances. Thank you, Rob. I've included some links to show how committed and good Shatner can be. A couple of interviews with Bobby Wygant that are unedited so you can see how he is before the interview starts, filming of a commercial presentation he did for a company, and finally, Denny Crane. You know what? I'm going to put these in the chat because I know all of these intimately well. Well, I wouldn't say, maybe not intimately well, could be the wrong word, but they're great. So I'm going to put these YouTube links in the live chat, which you can see, because all of these are definitely worth watching. And James, as you probably know, I love William Shatner. He's been my hero, and I was fortunate enough to even direct a movie that he was in, and that I actually co-wrote. So he actually would say words that we wrote for him. And I'll tell you something. I'll tell you a funny story. I don't know if I've told this story. I mean, I've told so many stories on the show, but so we stole a Shatner speech from a Star Trek episode, and we didn't even change it. The Risk Is Our Business speech we paraphrased. But there is a moment in Free Enterprise, and for those of you who might not know, the movie I co-wrote and directed and edited, Free Enterprise, there's a scene where Shatner meets Deborah Van Valkenburg, and we flat out just stole Shatner's lines, Shatner's dialogue when he's talking to Lenore Caridian in the episode Conscience of the King from the first season of the original series, when he's talking about women, you know, worlds may come, worlds may go, worlds what is it? World, see, now I forget. Galaxies disintegrate, but a woman always remains a woman. And that was a line. And when he was saying this, does he say worlds may come, galaxies disintegrate? See, now I have to go look. It's been a long time. What do you want me to say? I've watched a lot of things. But he says galaxies disintegrate, but a woman always remains a woman. And when he says this, he's actually saying these lines that he does not know, because how would he know? He doesn't remember his dialogue from a 1966 episode of Star Trek. But we were behind, and he takes these, he doesn't say them at all like he said them in the original episode, because the situation's totally different. He's supposed to be kind of drunk, and he's supposed to try and be charming, but he's tripping over his words. And yet he makes it, he's so great in that scene. As a matter of fact, now that I think about it, I can add that scene to I can add this scene to the links. Why? Yes, I can, because I put this scene up on here's the scene. And
here's an honest way to make yourself
not that.
$1,220.
$1,220. Here's the scene. You can watch it. You can watch this scene right now with Deborah Van Valkenburg. It's great stuff. So check that out. But he's amazing, and I totally agree with everything you said. There's a reason why so many people were influenced by him, and why so many people in the entertainment industry love Shatner. And to be around him in real life, you know, you'll love him even more. He's an amazing guy, and that he's going to be 90 years old, and he's still riding horses. He's still leading his best life. I have nothing but great things to say about William Shatner. And, yeah. This is a good letter. Chris W. writes in. Chris W. says, "Greetings, Rob. First time sending a letter to you, and I wanted to add a raindrop-sized comment to the ocean that is your wonderful community. I want to start off by admitting how truly lucky and thankful I am. I have an absolutely incredible father. He raised me the best he could for my 27 years of life, and I cannot be any better off as his son. Though he's always had trouble expressing himself, he's only encouraged me to do so through my words, writing, art, and actions. His difficulty with expression didn't stop him, though, for instead of telling me what was on his mind, he would share with me the things that he loved. He played me his favorite albums, Elton John's Goodbye Yellow Brick Road and Songs from the Big Chair by Tears for Fears. Watching his favorite movies, Alien and The Day the Earth Stood Still, and cheer on his favorite hockey team, the Detroit Red Wings. It was wonderful to do these things with him. He knew every word to Love Lies Bleeding, and when the xenomorph jumped out, he would shout at me to make the scare hit that much harder. Laughing was everything to us. Well, he's older now, and that comes to be both a plus and a minus effect. The plus is he's retired, and we have more time to casually relax and just enjoy one another's company. The minus is something that is assumed to be a little deeper, an unwillingness to consume new things. Now that I'm older, I decided a long time ago I wanted to show him something new that I discovered to return the favor of the years of entertainment he's provided me. For some background, I went to art school, so animation is very important to me. There is something more intentional and personal about an animated work. So one day, I sat down and showed him Akira, my favorite animated film of all time. However, he seemed to not really understand what was going on. I never saw it as a confusing film, though some of the themes may overreach here and there, but not something a willing mind couldn't grab, but he didn't like it. Okay, so I thought maybe something more episodic. I showed him my favorite show of all time, Cowboy Bebop. He liked that one better, but didn't seem fazed, like he was waiting for it to end, as if he was doing it more for my sake than enjoying what he was watching. So I was stuck. I don't think its animation as a medium for Star Wars The Clone Wars TV show is one we've watched together, and is both our favorite era of Star Wars. Yes, my father and I love the prequels and all it offers unironically. They're incredible, and I'll die on that hill proudly. Long live the prequels. We still cry when Jesse dies. So I wanted to think of something I could share with him, something that would hit him in his heart. Just after New Year, I decided to video call my father. We chatted for a bit, and we started talking about ghosts. He loves ghosts and ghost stories and the supernatural. Casually, I brought up a show I watched a while ago, and after a few words, we decided to watch the first episode of this show. Mind you, I had no expectations of him liking this. It's an anime after all, something I figured at this point he was just against. But surprises happen, and before I knew it, we watched the entire show in only 3 days. I would never have guessed that 2006's supernatural cat and mouse crime thriller Death Note would be the one to do it. The light of sheer wonder in his eyes and the smoke coming from his ears when the plot deepened made me love the property even more. He's now asking for more shows to give him. We're planning on Mob Psycho 100 next. I do not know this one. If you haven't heard of it, Rob, not only do I suggest it, but at the very least, listen to the BOP, the bop, that is the opening themes of both its seasons. Ooh, I'm going to. Mob Psycho 100. What all this brings up is how much fun it is to watch something you love with a friend, and they love it too. I would love to not only hear any stories of you sharing a property and the reactions you've received, but maybe even after some animated films I could share with my father. After Mob, I was going to hit up Attack on Titan, Violent Evergarden, and of course 1996's Ghost in the Shell. Thank you so much again for the show and everything you do. Live long and prosper, my friend. Chris. What a great letter, Chris. What a fantastic letter. I'll tell you a story. I've told this story on the show before, but I'll tell it again. So my dad read a lot, and he read Reader's Digest condensed books, which drove me bananas. And he would get them in the mail, and he had in his den, my bedroom, we shared a wall. My bedroom wall and his den were next to one another. And I'd go into his room, and he was always reading. He was always in his bathrobe, smoking a cigar, reading Reader's Digest condensed books. So what would happen is, like, he knew that I was really into movies and stuff, and Star Trek, and he would come in, and I'd be downstairs in what we called the TV room, where the laundry room was. It was basically my room away from my room, because I was the only one ever down there. I had my 4 VCRs daisy chained together. I had all my videotapes there, and nobody really bothered me. But you had to, there's the door to the garage was in that room. So my dad would come in at night coming home from work, and whenever I was down there watching something, my dad would come in and watch for like 10 minutes, and then he would figure out the entire plot and leave. And it used to drive me crazy. I'm like, don't you want to? He's like, oh, no, I get it. And it would drive me bananas. I'm like, come on, man. There's more to it than just the plot. That said, so one day, like my dad, I would always coerce, because I would always want to go see the movies, and my parents had a rule. Like, they would drive one way if I could get another kid's parents to pick us up. And that was always kind of a big ask, even though where we lived up in Seattle, in the Seattle, Bellevue, greater Seattle area, nothing was that far away, but still, it was a big reach to, then I had to, first of all, I had to then get a group of kids to go, because the more kids that were going, the better my chances are of getting someone else's parents to pick us up or drive us one way. But invariably, sometimes that wouldn't happen. Most of the time, it wouldn't happen. And my dad would usually be the one carrying the burden of taking me to and fro wherever it was I was wanting to go. And a lot of the time he would have to get me in because the movies are R-rated. So there was like 5 of us, and my dad's taking us. This was in 1981 when John Carpenter's Escape from New York opened. And it opened at the Crossroads Cinema, which was in Bellevue. And so my dad's driving us up there, and he's parking, and he has to buy tickets because it's rated R. And he takes us up to the box office, and I'm excited to see it. My dad says to me, he goes, "What is this movie about? Escape from New York. What does that mean?" And I said, "Well, Dad, it's set in the future, and all of New York City is a walled maximum security prison, and like it says on the poster, breaking out is impossible, but breaking in is insane." And I explained that there's this character that all I knew was named Snake Plissken, and the president's plane goes down in New York City, and he has to go in and rescue the president. My dad's like, "That sounds pretty good. Would you mind if I came and saw it with you and your friends?" I'm like, "No." I thought that was the greatest thing ever. And so my dad did. My dad came and bought tickets, and we all went in and we all watched. He also footed the bill for popcorn and candy or sodas or whatever. That's the kind of guy my dad was. And we sat down, and my dad watched the movie. Like, he sat and watched the whole thing, and he was enraptured. And he loved it. Loved it. And it was funny because we would always go to, like, Christmas in our house was Jewish movie day, so we'd always go to a movie as a family together. But, my dad kind of just went because it was Christmas Day. But this, like, I don't think he was a particularly big fan of movies. He liked reading. But he loved Escape from New York. And it was so much fun to have him do that. And, like, he asked, like, I don't know what it was about the title Escape from New York that was so intriguing to him. I don't know what he thought he was going to hear when I said that. Well, it's about the mafia. There's a mafia war, and they have to get out of New York City, or it's like Quick Change, but there's no Bill Murray and there's no clowns, and that movie hadn't been made yet, so I wouldn't have said it's like Quick Change. But it was great that he came, And I tried to show, like, I love to show my parents things I thought they would like. I showed my mom, because my mom had a green thumb, and she worked at a plant store for a while, and we had a really nicely manicured garden. The landscaping around our house growing up was very nice, and it was largely due to my mom. She would like to go out there, and she had her big rhododendron bushes, and she had jade plants in the house. And so one day I said, "Mom, I got this movie. I got the science fiction movie we're going to watch. It's called Silent Running. It's about the last trees that exist." And my mom liked it. Like, we watched, Joan Baez starts singing Rejoice in the Sun, Silent Running, or whatever. And my mom watched Silent Running. And I always thought that was a great victory when I could get my parents to watch something that they really liked. So I know exactly where you're coming from. Now, if you're going to watch, if your dad likes, here, I will say this. As far as anime goes, here's the thing. If you've never watched anime before, and you've grown up watching Disney movies, if you've never watched it at all, you've never watched any kind of, the character designs and the kind of animation it is can be off-putting to somebody who's never seen it before. So I totally get while your dad watching Akira going, "Wait, what? What's going on here? Why are these kids chasing each other on motorcycles?" I mean, it's something you really have to get into. Here's what I would suggest watching, because I think it's fucking great. Is Star Blazers, but the remake of Star Blazers, Space Battleship Yamato, $21.99. Try that. See if he likes that, because it's got more of a Star Wars feel. The remake, the Space Battleship Yamato, $21.99, is fantastic. It's really, really great. And if you want to watch my very favorite it's one of my favorite science fiction series of all time, but it's absolutely my favorite anime of all time, but it's really hard to find, is called Legends of the Galactic Heroes. And it's 110. You got to watch 110 episodes. It's like World War II meets Lord of the Rings meets Star Wars. It's incredible, and it's got one of the most involving storylines. It takes a couple episodes to really get into it, but there's like 100 characters. It's epic and sprawling. The problem is it's very hard to find in America. I have the Blu-ray set right over there, but it's the most hideously expensive piece of physical media I ever bought, because the rights, it's only been released once by Sentai Filmworks, but I think you can find it on Crunchyroll. Now, don't watch the remake. They started to remake it, but don't watch the remake. They came out like 3 or 4 years ago. Do not. You got to go back to the original OVA series, the original video animation series. Go back and watch that. And there's a prequel series too. Don't watch that. But that's what I would say. Now I'm going to look up Mob Psycho 100 simply because it's called Mob Psycho 100. So, what a great letter, Chris. Thank you for writing that in. Say hello to your father for me too. Tell him he and I probably park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay. Let's see. AJ Kell, or it could be AJ Kelly. It's AJ Kelle. Let's go with Kelly. AJ Kelly, King of the Wicker People. Well, greetings, Rob, and the Post-Geek Singularity at large from Flight 2530 LAX to Orlando. Traveling like a crazy person for the past number of days, I've caught a couple of shows over the past couple of days. Mainly one sticks out in my mind, and that was you referring to Zack Snyder's Justice League as metal, yes. I got a huge kick out of this because in a letter several months ago, I believe I referred to Snyder's take on the DC universe as insane and kind of metal, for better or worse. Fear not, this is not a letter for me to complain or try to take credit for anything. I certainly did not coin the term metal when describing things that look absolutely insane or really hardcore in some way. However, I did catch one of your comments in which you mentioned that another viewer described Marvel movies as pop, while on the other hand, the Justice League is rock and roll by comparison. As an active and working musician, one of my gigs being in a touring punk rock band, when the world exists, this got my weird punk brain thinking. Going back only the last several years, my brain started thinking of music genres and artists to which I could compare some of the comic book movies and franchises that we've seen over the years. Here's my attempt at just such a thing. These are in no particular order. This is not a ranking of any kind, but rather just my attempt to assign a comparison by genre, tongue firmly in cheek, as you might say. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is pop rock. The MCU is safe. Think of something like U2, Coldplay, or Michael Jackson. Looks and dresses like a rock star, but at the end of the day, infinitely accessible and safe. It is largely well crafted, though, at first glance, appears to be made by committee with a sure hand and corporate leadership, with only a couple of entries trailing off the beaten path. They print their own money. The Fox X-Men movies. They're classic rock. Just like the musical genre, this franchise is all over the fucking place. Big and booming offerings like X-Men 1, X2, Days of Future Past steamroll through the genre like Led Zeppelin, The Who, and Nazareth. And maybe even a little bit artsy and introspective, such as Jim Croce before them. Not all of the movies are great, or even pay attention to one another's continuity, but when it hits, it hits. By and large, it worked out in a big, bad way, even if some of the meeker offerings come across as lifeless and even a little perfunctory. We're looking at you, X3 and Dark Phoenix. The Man of Steel trilogy. Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and apparently Zack Snyder's Justice League. These three movies are definitely metal as fuck. This would be represented by the heaviest of the heavy. Imagine Machine Head, Sepultura, Guar, Sepultura. I can never pronounce that word right. It's hard, methodical, complex, loud, and brash. Your parents are certainly not going to approve. When the band comes to town, they bring hell with them. Their fans are robbing gas stations and spray painting the devil in the parking lot of the local church. The Snyder fans famously took out ads in Times Square, hired mercenaries to fly aircraft over the Warner's lot in Burbank, and clearly took over Twitter a couple of times. While weird freaks, myself included, get a kick out of this stuff, I can get why it's off-putting to some people. If it's too loud, then you're too old. Or something. Chris Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. In my mind, this would be best represented by the top tier of 90s alt-rock. Think of Nirvana, Mudhoney, Bush, or even the Melvins. Wow. Even though it can get a little loud and heavy at times, it finds a great balance between the sweet and sour. It has a great look and sound and seems to stand the test of time. People will probably talk about these movies, and they'll likely remain relevant for years to come. Deadpool and Deadpool 2. Even The Boys, while unrelated, could be in this category. These are straight-up punk rock. Like the Sex Pistols, the Misfits, and the Ramones. Deadpool is in your face, poking fun and taking the piss out of everything in sight. And they'll show you their ass or hold up a middle finger to the system with malice aforethought. It knows exactly what it's doing, and it doesn't give a damn one way or the other, and became successful despite itself. This is the definition of lightning in a bottle. Aquaman has to be prog rock. For me, Aquaman is a movie I'll probably never watch on purpose again. But if it shows up, I'll leave it on. Much like Dream Theater, King Crimson, or even Rob's beloved Molly Hatchet, Aquaman is something out of the daydreams and nightmares. You don't really know what you're looking at, octopus drum solo, but you're pretty sure that it's cool and it requires some serious creative juices to create. You have no desire to make it yourself, but you're sure as hell glad that someone decided to go for it. So there we go, Rob. Sorry for the long letter. I got the idea from your shows, and I had to figure out something to do in my delirium whilst crisscrossing back and forth across the country. If I've left out anything obvious or got something backwards, then please feel free to add or rearrange for my little list here. Live long and prosper, A.J. Kelly, king of the Wicker people. Oh no, AJ, I think you nailed it on this one. What a great letter. I think you really got it right. I really do. I think this is fantastic. Pop rock. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is pop rock, but it's very good pop rock. I love this. This is great. Terrific letter, man. Thanks for that one. A great, great letter. This one comes from Hunter Hewitt. Hunter says, "Hi, Rob. So the trailer for Cruella has finally arrived. Oh my, I've never been more excited about a Disney movie since who knows when. Emma Stone looks terrifying as Cruella. Although the trailer has a May 28th release, it's unclear to me if they're still planning on keeping it theatrical or being streamed on Disney Plus at no extra cost. Is it possible they're waiting until this gets closer to the time to say if it'll go to Disney Plus? Or do you think that Disney might do a simultaneous release in theaters and on Disney Plus with premiere access like they did with Mulan and they're going to do with Raya and the Last Dragon? I would love to hear your thoughts." You know what, Hunter? I was unclear about that myself. I don't know the answer. I had heard that Cruella was going directly to Disney Plus without a premium fee. I could be wrong about that. I don't know. Well, you know what? Let's use the internet and see what they say. Well, there you go. There's an article in Decider. Will Emma Stone's Cruella be on Disney Plus? Here's what we know about the new film. Disney has released a dark and dramatic look at Emma Stone in the titular role as Cruella ahead of tomorrow's official trailer premiere for the highly anticipated film. The new movie, which has been in the works for at least 2 years now, is finally making its way to audiences. Let's see. Does it say... Where does Cruella premiere? While Disney originally planned to release Cruella in theaters in December 2020, the pandemic forced them to change their release plans. Now, Cruella is scheduled to premiere on May 28, 2021. While it's been rumored that Disney may release Cruella on its streaming service, there are no official plans for the film to premiere on Disney Plus right now. Disney released a few of its films on Disney Plus in 2020, including Mulan and Soul. And this spring, we can look forward to another Disney movie landing on the streaming service with Raya and the Last Dragon, which will become available with premiere access starting March 5th. So that was the other day. So I guess everyone's confused. Oh, well. Yeah, I don't know. To be honest, I just don't know the answer. I guess we'll have to just wait and see. All I know is I thought the movie looked great. It was totally unexpected. Cruella by way of the Joker. I thought I love that. I thought it was great. Now let's find out what you are all saying. What's going on out there in this land of ours? I'm gonna go over there and see. So the Buttman. I've always been a Buttman. Robert, are you excited about the landing of the newest Mars rover, Perseverance? Apparently, it may discover alien life. I'm emotionally invested as I got to see the launch in person. I put the video on your Twitter, and you kindly commented. Thanks. Oh yeah, I watched. I was totally invested. I've been a space freak my whole life. I've told the story. I was like openly weeping at a bar in Montreal when Curiosity landed. So I was so excited to watch it. I spent, when Elizabeth and I were walking the dogs last night, I explained to her how excited I was. The engineering that was required to get Perseverance onto the Martian surface is just, it's astonishing. So yeah, I'm a huge space fan. Very excited for NASA and everybody involved. Oh, someone's calling me. But it was terrific, and I'm very, very excited. Martino Sulmoni is here and sends me a super chat. Hello, Martino. Hello, Mr. R&B. I'm sorry I won't be able to attend the party. To make amends, I'll let you know that during your European leg of the world tour, you will be able to drive some of them. Godspeed. Oh, that will be fun. I got to come visit you, man, wherever you will be. The party will be tomorrow. Afterwards, we'll have a WandaVision. Actually, tomorrow it'll be a total spoiler fest WandaVision thing, so that'll be fun. Willow says, how optimistic do you feel about the prospects of us finding evidence of life on Mars? If there is life on Mars, either in the past or the present, I really, really hope that it's of independent origin from life on Earth. Look, obviously, if they discover life on Mars, it would be the most significant discovery in all of human history, because it proves without a shadow of a doubt that there is life on other planets. Now, I think that's what you mean, that you really hope that it's of independent origin from life on Earth. It would be very interesting if they were able to find something about this life. I mean, first of all, if life's there, it's amazing. But if it was totally independent of life on Earth, somehow different than anything we know on this planet, it would be amazing. And I think, if nothing else, clearly it might serve as a warning. And what I find very interesting about our species is that we tend not to get our asses in gear until we're threatened. Americans are always good. Well, we used to be good when the going gets tough, the tough get going. That was something you could always rely on. Not necessarily anymore, but it used to be that way. But I think that if there was life on Mars, and further study of the red planet would eventually lead to us understanding what happened, I would imagine it was some kind of a cataclysm, like a large impact of an asteroid or something that took out there went the atmosphere. And, it would tell us that we need to be, our species needs to start, we need to start thinking in galactic time rather than the next fiscal quarter, because eventually it's going to come up and bite us in the ass. Look at what's happening in Texas right now. Texas's power grid is mostly unto itself. The Texans didn't want to rely on any states outside of Texas. So now they're in a world of hurt because of the power grid, because nobody expected the kind of polar vortex to hit Texas as hard as it did, because it had never happened before. Now, somebody even brought up on the show to me the other day, well, Rob, this is proof that there's no real such thing as global warming. And it's like, well, the actuary tables say our planet's getting hotter and hotter and hotter. It's been on an upward. Just because we have cold weather doesn't mean that the climate isn't changing and the planet's not hotter. We need to start thinking in the long term. And maybe if we find life on Mars, it would lead us to be a little bit more diligent about taking care of this planet, because we'll now have physical evidence of what happens when a planet, it might have been a cataclysm, but we don't know. But here's what happens. The planet is rendered uninhabitable, and we need to be very mindful of where we are and what we're doing. Our friend Hassan Chavez became a member. I don't know if that's old or new Hassan, but thank you very much. Alberto Bonsanto sends in a super chat and says, 4 hours of pure Zack Snyder are coming. Yes. I'm looking forward to it. Sheriff Carl says, I was watching Used Cars last night. I love that movie. And I fucking love Jack Warden. I love when he pops up in anything. You son of a bitch. Nobody swears and gets pissed better than good old Jack Warden. Do you have a favorite performance by him? Favorite movie swearer? Jack Warden in The Verdict. He plays basically Paul Newman's conscience. I think Jack Warden is great. Also, Jack Warden in I think he's in Justice for All. I believe so. I love Jack Warden. He's again, he's like an actor we'll never see the likes of again. And he was fantastic. Adam sends in a super chat and says, I can live with Reed Richards not appearing, but based on so many references to the comics, I would be disappointed if Mephisto does not show up. Yeah, I don't know, Adam. I just think it would be, I think it'd be hard. It's a big ask, because if Mephisto shows up, you need to know who he is. Like, that's a big ask unless you establish, and what I love is that we're going to find out. We are going to find out in a mere hours. It's 4:00, 8 hours, man. 8 hours left. I can't wait. Danny Sanchez just says, sends in a super chat and says, love you, Rob. Danny, I love you too, man. Thanks for supporting the channel. Yeah, I love that. 4, what is that? 5 exclamation points? 1 exclamation point, but 5 is metal. Richard sends in a tip and says, I like the idea one tipper came up with a week or two ago that Wanda has already said no more mutants, and the MCU was originally filled with mutants, but a young Wanda disliked being rejected for being a mutant, so she simply removed them from reality. This is set up by a conversation between Wanda and Pietro about their orphanage and the boy with the face. I also find the Mephisto nightmare ideas quite odd because they've simply not been set up at all. I know. The normies would bail. We very likely have all the pieces on the chessboard, with Hayward likely being the main antagonist and Agnes being an anti-villain. I feel this would also reflect Wanda's arc, that of being alone. The mutants blipping could reflect this emptiness. Also, Carol Danvers has been referenced 3 times now. Unless this is quietly setting up a pan-Disney Plus Marvel arc, I have a feeling she might appear at the end. Your thoughts? I think those are all great comments. And you know what? Carol Danvers is a huge part of Monica Rambeau. And I think that you could be right. It would not surprise me in the least to see Captain Marvel show up in this show. I do like the idea of that she already blipped out all the mutants and they've been here all the time. But then it would be like, okay, if she did that, when did she do it? Because there's still the whole history of mutants, and why weren't the mutants around? Why weren't the X-Men helping out in the Battle of New York City? Of course, they might have been, but we just didn't see them. Emma Bannon writes in, the lovely Emma Bannon. Hey, Rob, congratulations on your Netflix show. Could you tell us a little bit about what drew you to it and your hopes for it? Also, what do you think of the Pacific Rim anime Black Rim? Do you think it will skew more towards the first film or the sequel? Ooh, good questions. Well, I have to tell you, like many people, Dota Dragon's Blood was something I was completely unaware of. I knew nothing about it. I was not really. I knew Dota existed, and I knew it was an offshoot of like Warcraft 3, the map thing. That's all I knew. I didn't play Dota, but I knew it was like League of Legends and something like that. So when my friend Ashley called me up and said, Ashley Miller's been on the show. He's on the 600 show. He's going to be here. By the way, we're going to do a show on Monday. We've moved it because of talent concerns in terms of who we could get. Next week, so a week from tomorrow, I'm doing a whole show. Robservations will be on the making of Dota 2 and our Dota Dragon's Blood and where it came from. We're gonna have some special surprises from people, because if you look at it, I mean, I've spilled the beans. I think I've said I've said too much about some of the voice cast, which I'm not going to say anymore. You know, I don't think I should. I mean, Ashley's been saying more about it, and by the way, the announcement teaser dropped, but the real first trailer for the show drops at 9 a.m. tomorrow Pacific time. And if you're a Dota fan or you know anything about it, the series trailer, if you like anime, it's pretty damn epic. It's pretty epic. So you'll like that. But so Ashley just called me up and he said, "Hey, can you do some editorial work on these animatics?" And so how it works is, so they make the animation in animatic form, which is it's basically unfinished animation, and it's a combination of things. It's CG, it's hand drawn, sometimes it's just still frames, and so you have these animatics, and the final animatics are what eventually get fully animated. So Ashley was having a problem because he was here and Studio Mir was in Korea, and he wanted things changed that he was having a hard time to convey. So he asked me, he said, "Can you come in and work with me editing these animatics so I can get them exactly the way I want them and send them out?" And when we first started, I did the first episode, and when we first started, there was a lot more work to be done. I was doing a lot more work, but as the series progressed, Studio Mir, the animation studio, who has done amazing work on this show, they started to really get what Ashley wanted. And Ashley wanted it more grounded and more real world, because it's a medieval show, but it's R-rated. There's violence and sex, and it's not for kids. So that's what that's how I got involved, and then we just kept doing it. And I mean, I don't know if I can say this, but we've done 3 seasons of it. They haven't announced that there's 3 seasons of it, but we've done 3 seasons of it. So there you go. Yeah. And I'm really looking forward. I think the Pacific Rim anime looks great. It looks like something new. It looks kind of like a combination between the first Pacific Rim and Uprising. I was really disappointed in the second Pacific Rim because I love the first Pacific Rim. But I like seeing. I'm going to watch it. It looks really, really cool. I don't know what it's going to be like. But so Richard goes on to say, the glamour from Bond likely comes from Ian Fleming's experiences encountering Nazi-aware agents in high-end places in neutral countries during World War II. For instance, Casablanca in Vichy, Africa, Portuguese resorts, and Swiss ski resorts. By the time Dr. No was released, Cold War agents likely encountered each other by shooting each in the jungles of Vietnam or the deserts of Afghanistan. So Dr. No was already anachronistic and rooted in a unique situation during World War II between UK agents and Nazi agents. I agree with you. I think that 100%. And that's why I think it as time goes on, the Bond franchise has become more generic. And I think that's why it's become less. I mean, they've even shied away from. That's why I thought whoever wrote in yesterday, I don't remember who, the idea of making Tenet a Bond film and adding a science fiction element to it. I mean, that would have been the best way to add science fiction into a Bond franchise. I don't know if they probably would have had to add some more to it and made it a little bit more grounded in certain areas and explain it a little bit better. But I think it totally could have worked. And in a way, ever since I read that letter yesterday, I'm like, damn it. Why didn't they make Tenet a Bond movie? It would have been great. But yeah, I think, Richard, you're absolutely right. I think that's a great way to describe it. I think you nailed it right there. Smilodin Populator sends in a super chat and says, Rob, you're honestly one of the most talented movie pundits on the planet. Well, I don't know about that. But thank you for saying so. I mean, I'm just having fun. Look, if I'm not working on films, Tango Shalom. By the way, Tango Shalom, you've heard it a million times. The movie I produced and edited and post-supervised, and was the special effects supervisor as well, the visual effects supervisor. Is now going to be playing at the Charlotte, North Carolina Jewish Film Festival. So if you live in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, you can sign up and see the film. I don't know how much it costs. It's virtual, but you can see it. And there's a lot of announcements. It's going to be playing in Chicago, and it's going to be playing in Sacramento, and it's going to be playing in other places I can't mention. But you can see it. So I will say, I mean, it's as far as movie pundits, I don't know how many movie pundits right now have a movie in festivals and have a trailer dropping for the animated series they worked on as an editor. So that's kind of cool. Hopefully I'll get another movie off the ground. I'd really like to. I have one ready to go. Stubble McShave says, of all the WandaVision memes out there, I thought the one of Married with Children was the best. In the meme, they sat in the sofa and sang along to an episode of Psycho Mom. That's pretty funny. I didn't see that one. That's really funny. You're probably right about that. I can't wait. I mean, I'm really excited to see where it's going to go tonight. I mean, they got to kick things. They're in the third act now, so who knows what's going to happen. Sheriff Carl says, my dad took a bunch of us to see Escape from L.A. when we were 11 or 12 at the Oak Tree on Aurora. The movie was, well, it was a lot of fun seeing an R-rated movie with a bunch of friends and my dad. I had the cool dad. He didn't buy the snacks, though. You know what I saw at the Oak Tree? I saw Top Gun. I saw Top Gun at the Oak Tree, and if memory serves, yeah, because I'm seeing it now, the Oak Tree, and it was the first THX sound movie I saw in Seattle. Was Top Gun at the Oak Tree. So there you go. I'll look at who became a member. Did you? I think you've already been members, though. Bunyan Snipe became a member. Chris Stenfenagel became a member. I can't pronounce that. I hope I got that not horribly bad. Alex Acera sends in a super chat and says, good evening, sir. So are mutants beginning their entrance, or is Pietro a fake and not yet? Also, nay to celeb social media going forward. That's a good question. I really don't know. My question is obviously they if they didn't want to bring a connection somehow to the Fox mutant universe, they wouldn't have used Evan Peters. They could have put anybody there. But since Evan Peters played Pietro Maximoff, it leads me to believe that somehow it is playing with the idea of the multiverse. Two, if they're doing that, then the multiverse is where mutants have existed already. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how they're going to do it, but I'd like to kind of believe that maybe mutants have always been here. But the thing is, you can't have, if Magneto was a boy and in a concentration camp, now he's going to be ancient. And I don't like that idea. I mean, I like the idea of, we always talk about race or gender swaps. I would love the idea of a black Magneto and maybe a black Charles Xavier. That wouldn't bother me, but it might be a little too on the nose considering that Xavier and Magneto's conflict was designed around Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. But somebody brought up, I don't know if it was on this show or John's show, the idea of like Denzel Washington playing Magneto. And I'd be so there for that. Like, I don't know if he would do that, but I would love to see Denzel Washington in like Magneto's outfit from the first X-Men with that kind of asymmetrical thing, man. I love that. I think it'd be cool. But you know what? I think what's interesting is celebrities that are on social media is something that everybody is desirous of until it goes wrong. You want celebrities to have a huge social media following because it helps whatever they're in that you're in. You're making, especially if you're in an indie movie, and somebody has a huge social media presence, that's helpful for you. I mean, even people are getting cast. You go and what's your social media presence like? I think what has to happen is It's not that you need to kick celebrities off social media. It's just you have to be very clear with people up front. Here is our social media policy. We're hiring you. We know that you have an Instagram. You have 1 million Instagram followers. You have 1 million Twitter followers, and whatever else. You've got an OnlyFans page. Whatever. You have to be very specific once you are hiring this person, how they're expected to conduct themselves on social media, and it's got to be something that everybody knows. Their management knows, their lawyer knows, whatever, and you've got to make that very clear up front. So, who knows? But that's the way I would do it. Joseph, hello, Joseph. Oh, hi, Rob. Is it just me, or is this Mortal Kombat trailer better than any previous Mortal Kombat movie that came before? Also, I'm heavily leaning toward the aerospace engineer being John Krasinski as Reed Richards. First of all, I thought that the Mortal Kombat trailer was better than the other Mortal Kombats that we've received, but it still wasn't that great. Although Sub-Zero freezing a dude's blood in midair and turning the blood into a spike and killing him, that was dope. I mean, if that's what the movie's going to be, I'm there for that. I was like, I thought that trailer was, was on the, it's Mortal Kombat, but it was on the edge. But I kind of liked the whole idea behind it. But I mean, is it going to be a thing where they kill is there going to be one person standing at the end? So yeah, I don't know. What are you going to say? Austin Hernandez sends in a super chat and says, "Yo, my dude Rob, what's this about a party? Can I wear my birthday suit? Ha ha ha. Can't wait for WandaVision 2 tonight. I too will have an adult beverage in hand." Well, thank you, Austin. That's very, it's a party. We're doing these after parties. We'll do it tomorrow. Alex Acera says, "Oh, Louis Tan is secretly Kwai Lang." Maybe. I don't know, but it just, you know what the thing, I'll tell you something about that Mortal Kombat trailer. I think it was exactly what it needed to be. It didn't overreach. It had enough ties to the actual video game itself, and it was, when I watched that trailer, I have to say, I was like, oh, I'm gonna watch that. I'm like, okay. I thought it was great. Bronx Thrash sent in a super chat and says, "There was a Conan remake with Jason Momoa. I'm surprised there hasn't been a Red Sonja remake done yet. What about a Beastmaster remake as well? Both are guilty pleasures of mine." I like Beastmaster. I wouldn't call it a guilty pleasure. Maybe Red Sonja. But I'll tell you, there was going to be a Red Sonja movie. And Ashley Edward Miller, who created the Dota Dragon's Blood animated series that I worked on, wrote the script. And it was going to be, Millennium was going to do it. Bryan Singer was going to direct it. But when he ran into a bunch of career snafus after Bohemian Rhapsody, or during Bohemian Rhapsody, all of that stuff got canceled. And unfortunately, it was going to get made. The script apparently is great. I have not read it, but I've heard it's great. And maybe it'll get made. I hope it'll get made. Bobby Hatch-Kowal said, "I watched The Landing via Everyday Astronaut." Great channel, by the way. I do love that channel. "Did you hear the candid comms from the Mars team?" I did. Funny and heartwarming to see the veils come down. One of the woman's reactions was priceless. Even some groaning, waiting for the memes. Yeah, I can't wait. I loved hearing that. It was the NASA feed you couldn't hear nearly enough, but yeah, I thought it was great. Alexander Wilson says, "I was watching BET and Chris Robinson's 2017 New Edition miniseries on CBS All Access. Oh no. And it was really good. I forgot that Ralph Tresvant was the original lead singer. If you've seen it, what are your thoughts? Also, do you like New Edition?" You know what? I have not seen this miniseries, but I didn't listen to a lot of New Edition, but I liked multi-part, what would you call it? Multi-part harmonies, multi-part melodies. I like bands that are multi-vocal. Is that what I'd call it? What would you call it? Like a quartet. No, I did like New Edition. And how can you not like New Edition? Belle Biv DeVoe, Bill Bev DeVoe, bands like that. I don't know why I thought about that. But I didn't listen to a lot of it. I liked it. When it would come on the radio, I'd listen to it. I didn't turn it off. But I didn't even know about this miniseries. I love stories about bands. I know John Campea hates them. I'll watch anything about musicians. That's why I loved Get On Up so much with Chad Boseman. I just watched the Bee Gees documentary on HBO that was really good that Frank Marshall did. I thought that was really good. I read about this. Evan Newman sends in a tip and says, Deadline reported on A24's new Ari Aster and Joaquin Phoenix film Disappointment Boulevard. The plot is described as an intimate, decade-spanning portrait of one of the most successful entrepreneurs of all time. No idea who it's about, but I'll be there. Yeah, I read about that too. Look, I love what A24 is doing. I'm glad Ari Aster is moving out from doing Hereditary and Midsummer and doing something else. I mean, I think that'll be great. Brendan Sheehy says, Rob, it feels like a long time since we had an indie darling movie that has permeated into the mainstream like Juno and Little Miss Sunshine. Has the transition from a low theater rollout to being plonked straight onto streaming killed the pop indie? Ooh, what a good question. Unfortunately, I would say, yeah. I think it really has. And even getting those pop indies made, I think that the last thing, I guess you can't call it a pop indie, but I think The Queen's Gambit was the closest thing that's happened recently to something that became kind of a water cooler show. I mean, I really liked The Queen's Gambit a lot, but I guess that had more money behind it. But you're right. I mean, the look at the breakout. Even Tarantino. I mean, Pulp Fiction was a huge breakout indie film. They didn't make that for very much money, and that was following on the heels of Reservoir Dogs, or when Steven Soderbergh's Sex, Lies, and Videotape came out. That became a huge deal. I mean, that was that Sundance breakout hit, or Kevin Smith's Clerks, or there hasn't been one in quite some time. I mean, I, Tonya was kind of a breakout hit, but it didn't permeate the zeitgeist the same way. But yeah, I think, look, the situation we're in, the world has changed, which is kind of a bummer. Tony Reyes says, Hi, Rob. I think this question is more for whining about movies, but anyway, if so, you can skip it. No, I'll answer it. Just an idea. How about for Alien Day on 4/26? Ooh, there's an Alien movie marathon. Only Alien and Aliens, of course. The others we do not speak of. That's a really great idea. I love that idea. I wonder what day that is, but I love that idea. Let's do that. Although I think Alien Day, like 4/26, LV 426, it's so lame. But since it exists, I think that's a great idea. We haven't done the Alien movies. We should totally. That's a great idea. Richard says, Disney were planning to wind up their animation division after Sleeping Beauty because it was so expensive to make. But the advent of the photocopier changed this, and 101 Dalmatians was first out. Why these films look so different from each other. That makes sense. I didn't know that. Actually, I did kind of know that. I took a Disney course in college. It was the hardest. It was the hardest college course I ever took. My professor was an insane Disney fanatic, and I had more reading in that Disney class than any college class I ever had. And I mean, that was part of the reason. But there was other things that were happening too. That I think a lot of the time they started to move into areas when they wanted to have stylistic changes and people wanted things to look a little different. But yes, that was definitely part of that. Obi-Wan Dahomey, a.k.a. Beskar Batman, became a member. I like that. Beskar Batman. Alexander Wilson says, after that letter about comparing music and movie genres, what is the movie equivalent to hip-hop? Ooh, that's a good one. Maybe the Fast and the Furious franchise. Yeah, I'd say that. I'd say that hip-hop would be the Fast and the Furious franchise. Or, you know what? If you think about, well, it's not really, we don't have a modern genre equivalent. Because if you think about how people like the Wu-Tang Clan would sample movies like Lone Wolf and Cub, but they're not really, samurai movies are not, they're old school. It wouldn't be the same. I like that. I'll accept that, Alexander. I like that. The movie, that hip-hop would be the Fast and the Furious franchise. I think that's pretty good. Why not? I love that idea. This is such a good idea. Ari Altaris says, "Hi, Rob. I'm a big fan of yours." Well, thank you. I admire your taste in pop culture almost in every respect. I'd like to ask you what your opinion is about the aspect ratio of the Snyder Cut. Keep up the good work. This is a question that's come up a lot. And aspect ratios are so the thing about the Snyder Cut is it's basically in a square aspect ratio, and basically the IMAX ratio. People might say, well, it looks like TV. Well, it's different than a 4:3 aspect ratio, but it's got a lot more headroom. It's not going to be wide. It's not going to be a wide screen movie. It's not going to be 2:3:9:1. So, like, if you're watching a 4K, the official specs on a 4K widescreen, the official specs are 4096 by 1716 pixels, and that's 2:3:9:1. So when you see a widescreen a movie like Die Hard, Star Wars, it's usually in 4K. That is the aspect ratio. So it's very rectangular. So it's very rectangular. But the Snyder Cut's going to be like this, and I think that that's probably because Zack Snyder liked using the top and bottom of the frame. And I have to say, like, a good example of that, one of the things I saw that I love the widescreen aspect ratio. I love 2:3:5 or 2:3:9:1. I was not so much a fan of a 4:3 or 1:6:6. I do like the IMAX aspect ratio, though. And when they preserve that on home video, like Warner Brothers does with the Dark Knight movies, I think it can be really, really cool. But I think that with this film, I read an article that said that Zack Snyder just fell in love with that large gauge, that large frame. And I mean, if that's what he wants, I'm all for that. And they've gone back and they've done a new version of Batman v Superman in that aspect ratio as well. And I can see that because sometimes, depending on the kind of movie it is, it's an artistic choice. It depends. Like, I don't hate, like, Stanley Kubrick's films are all 1:6:6 basically, and I have no problem with that, except 2001, obviously. But I'll have to see it. But it's interesting. It's interesting. So, but yeah, I mean, I can't wait to see it. John is here. Says, "Hey, Rob, I'm not a fan of the Sci-Fi Channel content, but my friend turned me on to a pretty cool and funny show called Resident Alien, which is currently showing on Wednesday nights. Have you ever heard of it?" Elizabeth was watching she found the first episode on YouTube. She showed it to me. I was laughing out loud. I was laughing out loud at Resident Alien. It's called Alien. Isn't it called Resident Alien, not Alien Resident? It's hilarious. Now, I know it's based on a comic book, and people have said, Rob, it's not as good as a comic book, or it's totally different. I understand that they've adapted. They've taken the idea, and there's not a lot of. It's not a lot like the comic book, but Alan Tudyk is so good that it is so funny. It made me really, really laugh. I thought it was hilarious. I've been dying. I've been dying reading that stuff or watching it stuff. It's I haven't seen the third episode, but I guess there's another one now. There's another one out. Our friend Torrin Atkinson, who did a great short called Ruination for the Post-Geek Singularity first Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. Check it out, Ruination. Says, found out today a good friend of mine's diagnosis is 10 to 12 months to live. Tell your friends and family you love them and be good to yourself. And F you, cancer. I'm sorry to hear that, Torrin. That is a bummer. Justin Toner says, Rob, I missed most of the show. I was out celebrating my father's 72nd birthday with dinner. I see you got Dieter's package. Awesome. Can't wait to get my African Kung Fu Nazis. I also got Hell Comes to Frogtown from Vinegar Syndrome today in the mail. Well, yes, as you might know, Justin, since you missed the show, but you're here now, I can show you this. You might have already seen this. Here is, in fact, your copy of African Kung Fu Nazis, and this is Dieter's actual handwriting. So I'll make sure that you get this soon. And there you go. So let's see. Well, listen. You know what? I've got another letter here that I'm going to read. It's from Stubble McShave. I think this is a good letter. And would you imagine? It shocked me, too. I mean, it's really shocking to know that Stubble McShave wrote a letter about Wheel of Time. Does that shock you? I mean, it did me. Hi, Rob, Mike, and the Post-Geek Singularity. A few days ago, you were on the John Campea show, and you were discussing WandaVision. You two were talking about how fascinating the mysteries about Wanda, Vision, and Agnes were, how you couldn't wait for the next week's episode, and how the hype was on overdrive. You uttered the comment, "We want the information right now, but they won't let us have it. They tease us, and we'll just have to wait and find out." The line, "wait and find out," rang with a special meaning to me, but it wasn't "wait and find out" that I thought of when you said those words. I thought about "read and find out." You see, I was, or actually still am, part of an internet site called Theoryland. And you might have guessed it. Yes, Theoryland was a site dedicated to the book series Wheel of Time. Stubble, I never would have thought that. The speculation around WandaVision on a weekly basis reminds me to some extent on what we did on a multi-year basis. Theoryland wasn't a group of casual fans who enjoyed a story. No, we were often referred to as the HCFFs, which stood for the Hardcore Fan Freaks. We would look for every clue, turn over every stone, analyze every prophetic dream into its bare bones in order to come up with theories. The theories could be as simple as, who killed that character at the end of Book 5? We got an answer to that 17 years later in Book 13, when it was mentioned who killed him in a glossary definition at the back of the book. You see, Jordan never held your hand. You had to find out stuff without him coming out and saying it to you directly in his books. He had great foreshadowing and dropped very subtle hints early on, which are awesome to discover on rereads. But other than simple questions such as who killed another character, there were more nuanced questions that had to do with prophetic dreams, obscure visions of the future, or the fundamental metaphysics of the world and how it worked. And it's a huge secondary world to discover. It has over 20 well-defined cultures, and the story is much more complex than your average book series, with many more moving parts. I understand if people are hesitant to take it on because it's quite an undertaking. The whole series is as big as Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, The Silmarillion, the Harry Potter series, War and Peace, the Bible, and all the published A Song of Fire and Ice, Game of Thrones books combined. I've read it over 10 times. And I'm still discovering new things because there's so many hidden gems that the casual reader never picks up on. Anyway, we would at times come up with theories on, for example, what role the world of dreams would have in the final conflict, or if Min's obscure visions about the future could refer to the same thing that another person's prophetic dream was about. The theories would be posted on the website by individuals of the group, and the rest of us would try and find holes in the reasoning. It was actually a very scientific method. Later on, when the author had a book tour and we could ask questions, we'd try and frame the question in a way so we could get an answer that would be the last piece of the puzzle for a given theory. We'd have to frame it right, otherwise we'd get a RAFO, which meant read and find out. Here's the official definition of RAFO taken from Brandon Sanderson's website. RAFO! Robert Jordan famously used this to give a non-answer when asked questions for which he was not ready to provide details. When Brandon was chosen to finish the Wheel of Time book series, he also chose to honor Mr. Jordan's legacy by adopting this word and usage. RAFO, read and find out, indicates that you asked the right question at the wrong time. It might mean the answer spoils too much, it might mean that the answer would make people focus on the wrong things, or it might just be intended to keep you guessing. Regardless, it has been a pleasure not to answer you. So when I think of WandaVision, I think of the decades I spent coming up with the theories and debunking theories about how a secondary world worked in its smallest metaphysical aspects, or how a certain character would fulfill a certain prophecy in an unexpected but satisfying way. The whole thing is actually a bit nostalgic for me. I won't bore you anymore. I could spend an hour on this, but neither you nor the rest of the PGS is interested in that. Oh, I think we kind of are at some point. I will just leave you with this. There's been some tidbits given during the last few months to the fandom about the upcoming. Let me start this last paragraph again. I will leave you with this. There's been some tidbits given during the last few months to the fandom about the upcoming TV series. Well, today they dropped a 10-second long clip from the series of when a certain dagger is discovered. The Dusty Wheel, which is the Theoryland Founders YouTube channel, named as such because that was the camo tavern of the site in Book 13, had a stream on YouTube when it launched, and it lasted an hour and a half. The next couple of days, every little piece of that 10 seconds will be analyzed to the smallest detail. Here is the Twitter message from Wonton Prime where it was released, if you want to check it out. The Wheel of Time Twitter, where the shadow awaits. Hang on, I will give that to you. So this is for the new Wheel of Time series and the book series. And everyone knows that Stubble McShave is the biggest Wheel of Time fan on the planet Earth. So there you go. Here it is. It's in the live chat. P.S. If someone wants to read the series for the first time and get a lot of the hidden references without getting spoiled in any significant way, I'd recommend the podcast The Wheel Weaves. It's a couple in their 30s that's reading the series. He's read it many times and she's a newbie. They don't spoil anything beyond the chapter they're reading, and they discuss one chapter per episode in the beginning. They expand that to 2 or 3 chapters per episode later on. They also take shots of liquor every time she makes a Harry Potter reference. They're very likable, and I highly recommend it. Thanks, Stubble McShave. Well, Stubble, you are our resident Wheel of Time expert. We got to have like a watch party. We got to figure out a way to coordinate. I actually want to be like watching the show for the first time. I want to see that. Maybe we'll get somebody to set up a camera in your apartment and we'll do a live stream where we can watch. We can do a watch along, but we'll always have your face to look to see what you're thinking at any one time. It'd be totally worth it. And we should do a show on this channel. I mean, the Burnettwork. I always want to have other. We've got a creator. We're going to start launching a creator partnership deal where we're going to have other people invite other people to make shows, and we'll put them on the Burnettwork and do a sharing thing where you guys a very fair split of revenue. We should totally do a Wheel of Time review show. It would be a lot of fun. We should do it. Thanks for that letter, man. Love hearing from you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, kind souls, gentle beings, however you identify across 28 known galaxies, I'm going to end this show right now, and I would like to invite any of you to go over to John Campia's channel to go pregame for the new episode of WandaVision. His pregame show starts in 15 minutes, and anybody can go over there and bring an adult beverage and however you want to do it, which could be fun. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for supporting the channel generously through tips and super chats. Thank you so much. It's much appreciated. If you like the show, please subscribe and like and hit the indicator bell and all that crap. You know, standard YouTube stuff, but it helps builds the channel. It's all good. But I also want to thank everybody for writing. The letters I get are exquisite. So thank you all for writing letters. If anybody who has never written in before wants to write in, you can write me at theburnettwork.net at our website. So you can go there and check it out. We will have one of our member after parties tomorrow. If you're a member of the channel, at a certain level, we're going to have it'll be a spoiler party for, we're still doing spoiler Saturday too, I guess. Or maybe we'll just have a show and do spoiler Saturday and Saturday. Keep all that going. But we're going to do an after show tomorrow. Remember, the full trailer for Dota Dragon's Blood will drop tomorrow at 9 a.m. on YouTube. So that is the full trailer that shows you the scope of the animated series that I've been working on with Ashley Edward Miller, the series creator. God, I've been working on it since summer of 2019, which is crazy. And it's finally coming out, which is terrific. So there you go. And I want to thank my moderating staff, beginning with Mike Bodden. I want to thank the Richard. I don't know who else is here. Josh Rosowskis is here. Say hi, Josh. lots of people here. Justin Toner is finally back here. Thank you guys for being back here. I've got a great moderating staff, so thank them for being as great as they are. And yeah, that's about it. And on that note, I want to say that remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And on that note, I will be back tomorrow on the John Campy Show and right back here whining about movies this weekend. We're back. Color Purple for Black History Month on Saturday. Faux show. We're not going to, not be here. We're going to be back. It's just Elizabeth's schoolwork has been killing her. And on that note, I would say to everybody, have a better day.